Welcome to Crop Concerns for Video. I'm Marcia Gorel, the agriculture reporter for the Marshall Democrat News, and I'm here with Wayne Crook, our extension agronomist, and we're going to talk about kind of a strange topic for January, but the weather is beautiful today. I noticed a lot of people are putting on anhydrous, which is kind of unusual for January. In fact, I don't remember a time when we've done that. So tell me about, is that a good thing? Is this a good time to put on anhydrous, or?
Right now it's probably a better time than it was all fall because the ground is cooled off where you're not going to get the denitrification you did before. There's moisture in the soil now. This last fall it was fairly dry and there were some questions about whether the anhydrous would stay in the soil.
Okay.
But with the moisture in the soil, that will help hold the anhydrous in there. You want to make sure you don't put it on too wet, because it'll leave an open slot and you can lose some of the gas before it gets fixed in the soil.
Okay, so it looks awful dry where I've seen people putting it on. So what about putting on other kinds of fertilizer right now? I know that I'm sure Central Missouri Agri Service and other places are probably busy doing that.
Yeah, this is a good time really. Anytime you can get it on now and get it on where it won't wash off if we get any rains or something, get it kind of worked into the soil, especially in a no-till situation. Earlier you can get it on, it'll have some chance to move into the soil instead of stay on the surface. And basically anytime we've got this kind of weather and these kind of soil conditions where you're not compacting anything, it'd be a good time out and get a little jump on putting on fertilizer and anything else you want to do in the fall, this time of year.
Well, we'll see how long this weather lasts.
Yes.
So speaking of weather, you had done some research on some weather predictions for this year. Can you tell me a little bit about that?
A lot of the forecasts I see, they're still expecting an extended La Nina effect.
Okay, and what is La Nina?
Well, basically, we're going to stay wet and hot, and down south it's going to be dry and hot.
Okay.
Basically, where we're located right now, here in Marshall, we missed the really bad droughts by about 10 miles, and that's it.
Oh, really?
You go down to Pettis County, you had 60 bushel corn was really good.
Right.
And there were some areas, even here in north, where you had low yields, but generally kind of along I-70 is where the dividing line was.
Okay.
It wouldn't take much to move that 10 or 20 miles either way.
Right.
So we've got the same concerns for next year with the rainfall effect. They're still expecting it to be dry in the south again. They are getting some beneficial rains right now, but if they don't get any more rain, that's not going to be enough to produce a crop.
Right.
And they expect this La Nina to last into July or August again, when it could turn off dry, which would be good for harvest if we have plenty before then. But it's like every other thing's going. We're not at that 50% area where it's going to be good or bad. The tendency is a little more for it to be hot and dry for this next year.
Okay. All right. Well, I don't think that's good news, but I guess we have to wait and see. So.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, when we talk about the weather, when it gets warm like this, it's 60 degrees outside today. Mm-hmm. Is that going to affect the bug pressure that we have and the pests that we have in the corn and soybeans this year?
Probably won't. The standard extension answer is it all depends. If it stays warm like this, yes, it will. They'll tend to be less winter hardy, and then if we get cold conditions later on, then it can affect the winter kill of the insects too. But it just depends a lot on what the weather does from here to now. But and another thing you got to worry about really is on wheat too, because it needs so much cold weather to go through hardening, or else it won't set heads. So we need the cold weather to get it fixed too.
Well, that was another question I had on this. You know, what they used to say that they needed to have snow on it. Well, there hasn't been any snow yet, and so will that affect? I know there's not a lot of wheat planted around here, but there is some. I've seen quite a bit actually.
It's really not the snow. You need so many days of below freezing temperature.
Oh, really?
Yeah, in order for it to induce tillering. Otherwise, it'll just come up and be a grass and won't set any seed.
Oh, okay.
That's why we grow winter wheat here because of the tillering. You go up north, they can't grow winter wheat because it gets too cold. We also have problem. We can't grow spring wheat down this part of the world because it's too hot during the summer for it. It can only live during cool temperatures.
Okay. So, well, I imagine we're still going to have winter yet. I doubt the 60 degrees is going to last through spring, but
yeah, in
who
Missouri,
knows?
you can always expect winter sometime. It could be July, but you can expect it.
Well, we can always expect the weather to change,
Right.
so I guess we'll have to see what happens. So, you had just done an article, in your weekly article that you do for the Democrat News. You wrote about 300 bushel corn and the possibility about that. Could you tell me a little bit about, you know, how soon that could happen, or are we going to get that next year, or?
Well, we have some people that did it this last year where they got the rain and stuff.
Is that right?
Yep. The winner of the National Corn Yield Contest did 429 bushel an acre on his fields.
Okay.
I think he was in West Virginia out there someplace. And contest growers can consistently get 300 bushel.
But those are small plots, so the average in Missouri is what, 146 bushels?
140. This one farmer actually had a 300 bushel an acre yield average on his whole farm.
Really?
Yeah. But the thing, you see a lot of press about it right now because the world population is growing. We're at 7.1 billion people now, and by 2030 we're supposed to be at 9 billion people.
Right.
And we need to increase our food production by 50% in the next 20 years. That's going to be hard to do, but the potential is there. It's on corn. Well, it's like on soybeans. If you look at a soybean plant when it comes up and the number of flowers it sets, it has a potential of 500 bushel an acre.
Is that right?
On soybeans. But then anytime the plant is stressed for any reason at all, the potential decreases.
Okay.
We have an average of 42 bushel an acre.
So it gets stressed a lot.
It gets stressed a lot. But with the dry weather we have, the growing insects, nutrition, the same thing is with corn. The potential is there.
Okay.
And with the newer genetics they're coming out with, they're being developed for higher populations and higher yield environments.
Okay.
So if you take one of those and you put it in a lower yielding environment, you're going to limit its potential right there.
Okay.
But there's a lot of things you can do to increase the yield and just common sense things. But the main thing is each producer needs to evaluate his own situation and find out what works on his fields, not his neighbor's fields or not his own field across the fence.
Okay.
Each individual field needs to be evaluated and do what that field needs to get the maximum production out of it.
Okay. Is there some simple thing that people can do to up production just a little bit?
Well, right now, with the new hybrids they're coming out with, they're all being tested at higher populations.
Okay.
32 to 34 is where the hybrids are developed for. If you're still planting 26 to 28, you're limiting your potential.
Okay.
Some of the new varieties actually would do better at 40 to 45,000
Is that right?
if you've got the environment to support them.
Right. You have to have a good.
But the population is one of the easiest things I think you could do right now, so, assuming you got the fertility and water.
Right.
And then after that, you've got hybrid selection. You need to avoid compaction if you can. Okay. Some people get in fields too early. No-tills especially, because you can drive across a no-till field and it'll look fine even while it's still wet underneath.
Right.
And as we get these bigger crops out in the field, we're going to have more problems with diseases and insects, and we need to scout for them and watch for them. This guy that won the yield contest at 429, he actually put fungicide on 3 times last year.
Really? As opposed to most people just put it on once,
Right.
or if they do it at all.
And you just need to put the fungicides and extra treatment like that on when you need it, not
Right.
just go every 30 days and put it on, because a problem actually could come in earlier than you think, or it may
Okay.
not be as severe.
Okay.
But you just need to evaluate the conditions in your own fields and do it regularly.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Food for thought, I guess.
Yeah.
So to speak. Okay. And another thing you'd written about recently was volunteer corn. We know we had a lot of corn go down last year, and so it looks like volunteer corn might be a problem next year. What can a farmer do to solve that problem?
First of all, he needs to make sure what kind of corn he had planted and what the genetic traits were, especially for herbicides. Because if he has Roundup corn and he's following up with Roundup beans,
right,
Roundup won't control the corn.
Exactly.
But there are some chemicals like Post and Holon that can go in there and will take the corn out.
Okay.
But if you've got Liberty Link corn and Roundup beans, you might take it out with Roundup, except usually when you've got Liberty Link in corn, it's also Roundup resistant.
Right.
And then if you get into beans that are Liberty Link, then you can use Liberty Link on Roundup corn as long as it doesn't have the Liberty Link trait.
Okay.
So between all those, you just make sure what traits you got in the corn, what you got in the beans, and then see what chemicals. The worst part about this is they're coming out with some new chemical traits they're trying to incorporate into corn and beans both, which is going to limit the options you have to try and control one crop in the other.
Okay.
And some of those will be out this year on a limited basis, but more of them will be out a year or two after that.
All right, so something to look for. What kind of problems can happen with the volunteer corn? I know you wrote about some of the insect pressure that can cause a problem.
One of the main problems with corn, it'll act like a weed. In beans, it's obvious. You got corn going out there, you're hurting your bean yields.
Right.
But even in a corn field, because first of all, the corn that is out there is a selfed plant. It's not a hybrid plant.
Right.
So it's got less yield potential. It's also probably going to come up at a different time than what you plant in the field. And they've even shown when you plant corn and a plant comes up a week later than the other ones planted in the same row,
right,
that can still cost you 2 to 5 bushel an acre in yield with this, even if it's hybrid. So one that's not hybrid and comes up at a different time is still going to use water and nutrients. And especially when you're trying to maximize yields with the higher populations and stuff, you need to eliminate all the competition you can that's not going to be productive.
Right. Okay. And that's another thing to do for that 300 bushel corn, right?
Right, right.
Yeah, first liar doesn't have a chance, right?
No, they don't. That's what they say at the coffee shop.
Yeah, that's what they say. Okay, well, thank you very much. I think we've talked about some interesting things today. I want to thank our videographer and editor, Sarah Reed, and also Central Missouri Agri Service for sponsoring our video. Thank you very much, and Happy New Year.